Hey everybody, I'm David Gonzalez. Welcome to tonight's live stream of Finding North, a play that I wrote long ago. And tonight I'm so happy to be sharing the stage with my friend Daniel Carlton, who's written some additional material for the play.
It's such a great pleasure to be here. This is going to be amazing. David Gonzalez, Greenkill. What more can you ask? Enjoy the show.
And Greenkill is a community center of the arts here in Kingston, New York. Wonderful things happening here. The art gallery, public events. Please check them out at greenkillsubstack.com.
The North Star is for real. If you go outside tonight, you'll see it. Just find the Big Dipper and the largest, brightest star in its handle, Polaris, the never ever changing North Star. Its light shines the world over, so you could say it belongs to you too. People have been following this light for years. These are some of their stories. Let's start. Small town, house on the northern banks of the Ohio River. The house belongs to John P. Parker, a former enslaved person and one of the greatest conductors of the Underground Railroad. That network of safe houses set up to guide and usher people to freedom. Am I supposed to keep going? Yeah, I was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. I've been following that North Star my whole life. Seemed like one way or another, the closer I got to it, the further away it was. I was born a slave. I ran away, got caught, escaped, ran away again, caught again, jailed, sent back to the master. Lord knows I tried. Finally, I was fortunate. A kind-hearted neighbor purchased my freedom. I paid them back every penny. Married, bought myself a home next to my place of business, an iron foundry in Ripley. It was working for me. Young white man by the name of Trophy, who lived across the river in Kentucky. His father owned several people. You heard me. He owned people. Trophy was always poking me about my habits of prowling around at night taking charge of fugitives. I stoutly denied such activities, but from time to time he'd come back around to it. Till one day he said, "Mr. Parker, if you so brave, why don't you run off one of my father's people?" I said, "I don't do that kind of thing." Secretly, I vowed to take his dare. Later that same day, after dark, I took my skiff slowly rowed it across the river. My sole purpose was to find a Mr. McDowell, who was one of his father's slaves. I pulled my skiff to the shore, went to the top of the bank. I walked about a quarter of a mile when all of a sudden I heard some voices. I hid in the bushes. I wanted to see who these men were. Schroffy comes out smoking a cigar, and he's accompanied by one of his father's slaves. In fact, the very man that I came to free. Two men went off and walked towards the river. One of the men came back. Now, as he wasn't smoking, I assumed it was McDowell. So I followed him through a clearing. When I distinctly found that I was on the heels of a white man, I hurried back to my skiff, caught my breath, and waited for another chance. Determined to free him, I went back another night. No one came. But on the third night, my chance finally came. "160 years ago, John P. Parker lay in those bushes waiting to usher a man to freedom. Now, I don't know if I'd have the guts to do what he did, but I admire Parker and his good work. There are many, many people looking at the heavens, looking for the North Star, finding north. So many people with so many rivers to cross to a freer, better life. The Su Casa Community Center. Sylvia has sharp Indian features, coffee-colored skin, and straight black hair. I am not here to take anything from anybody. You think I like it when I walk down the street and I get the look. You know the look that says, this is my country and you don't belong here. If the look is suspicious, is angry, is fearful. I did not want to leave Guatemala. Guatemala is my home. My parents are there. It is where I am from. But I had to go, otherwise I might not live. I was 20 years old and at the university. I wanted to make a difference in some people's lives. So me and my friends, we helped poor people get their land back. Then one day, my friend, Juan Pablo, disappeared. Then they found his body. There was no doubt about it. Juan Pablo had been assassinated. Then Eduardo, the same thing, disappeared. Then Elena, Maria, Jesus. 8 of my friends in 11 weeks. I knew that I was next on the list. I had to go. My mother told me that we had cousins in America. So 3 days later, with $7 in my pocket, the clothes on my back, I bought a bus ticket to the Mexican-American border. It was a long, hard trip. There were many police checkpoints along the way. My heart was beating wildly. At one checkpoint, a guard watched me very closely.
Tú eres guatemalteca. Enséñame tus papeles.
No, I am not Guatemalan. I am Mexican, and since when do we Mexicans have to have travel papers in our own country? It worked. I was finally on the bus and made it to the Mexican-American border, Rio Grande, the river, into Texas. When I got off the bus, I didn't know where to go. I needed some people to find some people who could help me, and I did. A woman gave me a tube from a tire. I took it to the gas station and pumped it with air. A man gave me a bottle of water, and a woman, she gave me a ride to where the river wasn't so wide. And she introduced me to a guide, a coyote, who was going to help take me over the river. When it was dark, I put the tube into the river and slowly made my way across, shivering and exhausted. I was on the soil of the United States at last. But there lay 50 miles of brutal desert between me and safety. The coyote told me and the other people to stay together. He said that we had to be very careful. A few trips before, he told us a story about a woman who stepped on a 4-inch cactus. The cactus needle went through her shoe, right through her bone. She was in so much pain, he had to leave her there to die. My group, we finally moved some more. It was so hot during the day, and at night, cold. The only thing that helped me was the beautiful stars at night. I took one sip of the water every hour. I never knew how long an hour was until then. We made it. Gracias a Dios. Thank God. At last, the car picked us up and traveled. And another car took me all the way to my cousin's house. I don't want to sound ungrateful, but at first, it was not easy here. It was very hard, and I was not having much luck. But now I've been here for many, many years, and it's gotten better. Though sometimes I still get the look. And when I get the look, I want to say, you think that I am so different from your grandmother and grandfather and how they came here to America. But mostly, I keep quiet because I've learned to be happier, and sometimes even feel like I am at home. third day, finally saw McDowell. I whispered to him. He told me to meet him in the woods and he would find me. When I told him of my reputation and that I was John P. Parker, he knew I was there to run him off. Now he said, I have a wife and I have a child and I can't leave them behind. I said, don't worry, I'll take them all. When suddenly, he gave a loud shriek and started running as fast as his legs could carry him. I turned around and saw a club aimed at my head. I turned around, and just as I ducked, the blow missed me and hit me on my shoulder. I staggered back, and then whoever it was tried to wrestle me to the ground. I picked up some dirt, threw it in his eyes, blinded him long enough to get back to my skiff. Out of breath, I made it. The next day at work, Trophy told me a story about how a fugitive tried to attack him. I said, I wonder who that scoundrel was. He said, oh, I have an idea who that was, Parker. And when we find him, the only running that he's going to be doing is at the end of a hangman's rope. When I met McDowell a week later in the bushes, he was so scared, he could barely talk to me. He told me that since that night, he felt he was being watched. He said that Trophy had them under the suspicion, he and his wife, that they were going to run off. So in order to keep that from happening, he made them take their baby and place it at the foot of the master's bed at night. The old man had a chair in there with guns next to it. I proposed to McDowell that he go in that house and he rescue his babies. He refused. He was afraid of them guns. So then I promised him freedom and held it up to him, but he still wouldn't take it. His wife was ready though when he said, listen, maybe we shouldn't be so anxious to go. I mean, I knew then and there that it was up to me to go rescue that baby from that bed. I told him, he and his wife, to meet me later down the road, and that if they heard any shooting, don't come back and try to save me. I could take care of myself. Just meet me down the road. And I said to McDowell, here are my shoes. If anything happens to me, get rid of them with these final instructions. I took off my shoes, handed them to McDowell, saying that in case of trouble, he was to take the shoes back and destroy them. Together, we left the cabin. They went through the field to the road. I started for the house. The downtown Islamic Center, a beautiful mosque. The walls are decorated with silver calligraphy, the 99 names of God. Yusuf, a 15-year-old son of Pakistani immigrants, tells what happens to him a few days after the September 11th attacks. So I was in school, right? And I was walking with my friend Hasif. We were on our way to class, social studies, I think. And out of nowhere, this guy's like 11th or 12th grade. Yeah. He comes and he just pushes me hard against the lockers. I mean, pushes me. And I'm like, what the? And he starts pointing his finger at me. And he's looking like he wants to kill me. And he's saying, terrorists, terrorists. This is for what your people did in New York. And I'm like, I don't even know the guy. And then he puts up his fist like he's gonna hit me. And I throw my hands up in the air, right? And he just laughs and walks off with his friend. Hasif helps me up. And he's like, we should go to the principal. I'm like, nah, forget about it. He's a jerk. Let's just go to class. And we did. But in class, I'm like shook up. And then check this out. After dinner, my mother goes out to take out the garbage, right? And I hear her scream. Like my mother is seriously screaming. I'm freaked. I run downstairs. She's outside the door, screaming her brains out. I open the door, and there on the mat is a dead rabbit. A dead rabbit with its throat cut out, lying in a pool of blood. I kicked it off to the side, off the walkway. I brought my mom's into the house, and she's like, who? Why? Why would anyone do this? What does it mean? I don't know either. And I'm like, I don't know. And then I remember what happened at school and in the bus. And I'm like, whoa, this is like getting like really weird. So I told her how some of the kids have been like blaming us and bugging out since the terrorist attacks. And she's all about, we're moving back to Pakistan. It's not our fault how come some people don't see us for who we are, and we didn't have anything to do with the terrorist attacks and those towers. We are American citizens. We love this country. The media makes it sound like all Muslims are guilty. Ignorant people need a scapegoat. I can't take it anymore. At least in Pakistan, we are all Pakistanis. We're going back. Okay. Man, it was wild. It was like really wild. Oh, okay, now get this. My grandmother, she comes upstairs. She takes a shovel from the garage, goes outside, scoops up the rabbit, takes it to the backyard. We all went to the back window, and we're looking at her like, and she like buries the rabbit. And though I couldn't hear what she was saying in her voice, I could see her mouth moving. And no doubt, man, she was praying. And something about it told me that she wasn't just praying for the family or the rabbit. She was praying for like the whole world. When Grandma came back in, she gathered us all together. She said, no matter what anyone says, you keep love in your heart. It may seem like a foolish thing to do, but there are times when you've just got to throw yourself into goodness with abandon. Even if it seems crazy, you keep love in your heart. I'm I'm like, what was that? Like, guru grandma? You know what I'm saying? But man, she's right, dude. I mean, like those kids at school, right? Like, I don't know what they're doing, but like if I pointed at that kid right back at him, man, he would have won me over to their sickness. Oh, that's cool, right? Man, throw yourself into abandon with goodness. Be crazy. Yeah, that's it. Grandma is cool, right? Throw yourselves into goodness with abandon. You got to be crazy. I started for the house. I could see the candle glow through one window, and I knew that was the sleeping room. I came to the kitchen. Right at the door, I pushed open and entered. I was careful to leave the door wide open so that I could get out easily. In the darkness, I could see the large crack at the bottom of the door of the sleeping room, through which the rays of the candle showed. As I picked my way across the room, it seemed to me that I struck every loose board in the place. At the door, I hesitated. I felt like I was taking my life in my hands. Twice I put pressure on the door. Twice my heart failed me. The third time, my thumb pushed down and it gave way. The door swung well for a long distance. Then the hinges began to squeak, making noise. I thought to waken the whole household, but nobody stirred. I could see everything now. The woman, the baby, the guns. I made my way on my hands and knees across the floor. I heard a sound, turned, and saw the door close behind me. There I was, shut in a room with a desperate armed man and his woman in search of someone else's baby. There was nothing for me to do but to secure that baby and get away as quietly as I could. I reached out and getting a firm hold, I pulled the child off the bed. As I did, there was a creak of the bed springs. I heard old man spring out of the bed, and he said, "My guns!" I jumped to my feet, and I rushed to the door. I heard the chair fall over, and the pistols bang onto the floor. I ran across the kitchen, outside to the yard. "I got your baby!" And then Trophy said, You come back here. You belong to me, McDowell, and your wife, and your child. You are my property. I just rode as fast as I could. Arriving on the opposite side, I asked McDowell for my shoes. Can you believe it? He said that he had dropped them back on the other side. Those shoes will lead them straight to me. a story circle at the Sycamore Senior Center with a group of elders in their 70s and 80s. This is Erica's story. They tied my papa's hands behind his back. He couldn't even wave goodbye to us from the Nazi's truck. A cloudy trail of dust, and my father was gone. In 1 minute, life changed for me. It was in Bucharest, Hungary, 1942. It was the war, and they took my father and lots of other Jewish men for forced labor. To where? Nobody knew. For how long? Nobody knew, just gone. We had to make do. There was very little food. One day, in the middle of the night, Mama woke me up and told me to get dressed in a hurry. I was scared. Were the Nazis' trucks on our street again? Or had she heard shots in the neighborhood? As soon as I was dressed, she pushed me out into the cold, windy street. Mama, what is happening? Where are we going? She stopped, grabbed me by my shoulders, looked me straight in the eye, and with a voice trembling with urgency said, I learned where they are baking bread. I was little, maybe 5 or 6, but I knew what this meant. The snow was high, and I had to take giant steps all through the street to keep up with her. But the idea of bread, of fresh, warm bread, kept me going. I ran along dreaming of the taste, and then, yes, the smell. We turned a corner, and the smell from the bakery filled the street. I remember feeling so happy. That smell was hope itself. I thought that if somehow such a magnificent smell could still be produced in Bucharest, then there was still a chance, a possibility that things could be normal again. Or that the fighting would stop, that my father could come home. Mama and I raced down the street. But when we got closer, our hopes died. The bread line was 2 blocks long. Mama told me to hold our place, and she went to the front to see more. When she came back, there were tears in her eyes. She didn't have to speak. There was no more bread. She put her arm around me, and we turned to go home. Erica. I heard a voice calling. What? Who called my name? Erica, Erica. It was our neighbor Dino, my father's friend. Since the day they took Papa away, Dino had been keeping an eye on us, making sure we were okay. And here he was, and waving a big loaf of bread in the air like a flag. He ran to us, and without saying a word, broke his loaf in 2, put 1/2 in my arms, and kissed me on the head. And then he broke a chunk of half the bread and put a warm, delicious piece in my mouth. You know, I can still taste that piece of bread because it was the bread of kindness. After the war, a miracle. My father came home. We were the lucky ones We had family in America and came here as soon as we could. Here, we can be free. Soon I heard voices outside, people knocking at the door. Who's that making that racket? There were 3 men below, including Trophy. He was surprised to find me as he figured I was away with the fugitives. In spite of finding me at home, he began accusing me of running away his father's people. You run him away, Parker. I know you did. No one but you would steal that baby. What baby you talking about, Trophy? You know all about that baby, Parker, and you're hiding him in your house. Ordinarily, I would have not permitted anyone search my home. This time, I did not care. Wait while I put on my clothes and I'll come down and take you through the house myself. I knew the longer I kept them busy with me, the less likely they were to find the runaways. Just a minute. Hold your horse. Take it easy. Here I come. After taking a long time dressing, I went down. Trophy had his pistols in his hand. He was mad clear through. I'm sure if he had found his people in the house, he would have shot me down in cold blood. We went through the place, room by room. This is our kitchen, closet, my sleeping room, parlor, upstairs to the attic, downstairs to the basement. Oh, I took them all through the place. And when the last corner was searched and they failed to find McDowell, Trophy went out, turned around and said, I believe you were over the river just the same. And you know where our people are, Parker? That night's search was nothing compared to the scene I had when Trophy came into the shop the next morning with my new shoes. He shoved the shoes in my face. He had me scared when he said he was gonna go from store to store in the town until he had the shoes identified. Wow, I put up a good bluff. I did try to beat him uptown to tip off the merchants from whom I had purchased the shoes. Purchased them shoes on the previous night. All I could do was hope and pray that that merchant would not give me away. Trophy, true to his word, did go from shop to shop, but not a soul had ever seen the shoes before. If only he had kept his mouth shut, I never would have thought to run his people off, but he dared me. So I felt called upon to carry out the venture to his own embarrassment and to the freedom of that couple and child. John P. Parker did all that and more. He brought over 400 people across the river in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. You might get this one in a history book, probably not. Back in 1914, I was just 5 years old, but my eyes were open enough to see, to remember I was living with my mom and daddy in Alabama. We were sharecroppers. That was where you worked the boss's land for a small share of the crop. One night after I was in bed, I heard dogs barking, a lot of them, and then people's voices, white people shouting in front of the house. My parents were scared and held me close. They were calling for Daddy to come out, but it wouldn't go. And we looked out the window, and those people had set up a big cross about 20 feet high and lit it on fire. The flames rose up past the trees, then bam, a jar filled with burning gasoline, a kind of homemade bomb bursting through the window and made everything smoky, and another one, and another one. Soon the whole house was on fire. We ran out. They grabbed Daddy, took him to the right side of the house where there was a big tree. They took me and Mama to the other side, and one of them squeezed his hands on my forehead like this here, so I couldn't close my eyes. I watched him tie my daddy's hands behind his back, put him on a horse, put a rope around his neck. Then they tied the other end of the rope on a high branch, and then they slapped that horse real hard so it ran off. Daddy dropped and hung there. Mama screamed, "Take him down," but they wouldn't. They kept him there until he stopped moving. 99 years later, that sight is still burning in my eye. He didn't do anything to those people. It was just pure hatred. And every time there's an act of violence out there in those streets, whoever the victim is, black, white, yellow, don't matter, it picks at that scar, opens it up again. So fight for what is right, not with hatred, but with courage and dignity. Keep your eyes and ears open for people who lie to you, who try to take little bits of your freedom away from you. That's called being vigilant. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. I had a river to cross too. It was a rainy day years ago. So I get a call from my agent about a last-minute audition. Back then, I had a baby face, and he told me to dress, young, because the role was for a teen. Now, I wasn't a teen, but I knew what he meant. Baggy hat, clothes, baggier with the jeans, looser with the shirt, backwards hat. So the appointment was downtown, below 14th Street somewhere. I lived in Times Square at the time, New York City. So on my way to the Port Authority bus station, I saw the number 10 downtown bus. I made a mad dash for it. Suddenly, I was tackled from behind, face down on the sidewalk with a black boot on my back. "Don't move," were the words that went the sound of the walkie-talkie above me. I didn't do anything, I said. "I'm not going to tell you not to move again," said the voice, "or I will blow your effing head off. I could now feel a gun on my neck. From my sidewalk view, was confirmed that it was two cops. It was the boots, not Timberlands or Air Nikes, which, if truth be told, would be expected to be the prevailing narrative at that time as to who would stick you up. My heart was beating faster than my thoughts. I tried to will it to slow down. Any sudden move could be my death. Just as quickly, the foot was off my back. It's not him, the other cop said. See, a call must have come through because they took off, leaving me on the ground without any explanation or apology. It was the most artless moment of my life. I only wanted to live. I realized that because in my paralyzed state of frozen time, even after they left, I started noticing things on the sidewalk. Wads of spit out bubble gum, broken glass, the circumference of the trash cans, which looked like discarded, broken glass looked like discarded diamonds, and the amount of cracks in the sidewalk. I was looking at things as art. In this heavily traveled tourist area, I was the current freak show. People stared at me as if they had seen some New York City bad man brought down by the tough boys and blues. Tourists were even pulling out disposable cameras. My North Star was the reclaiming of myself as human, as a soon-to-be father, as a human being is. My muddy clothes were wet. My heart was pounding even faster, and my hands were shaking when I picked myself off that dirty sidewalk. It wasn't easy. I remembered an exercise from an acting class that involved imagining an invisible string that starts at the crown of your head and ends up at the sky. It will help you to stand straight and tall. So I slowly did. Each upward movement of my vertebrae was a lifeline back to my dignity. All the way standing now, I was in control of my movement again. My heartbeat, now on a drum beat. Restored in the moment by my North Star, art. And now all these years later, so many final heartbeats for so many, so quickly on so many sidewalks. When we live, we must tell the story. It is not our shame, it is theirs. What Grandpa had to witness, Erica and the bread of kindness, Yusuf, Sylvia crossing the Rio Grande in an inner tube, my story in New York City, John Parker, and those shoes. Each story filled with longing for the promise of America. And it's right in the Declaration of Independence. Page 1, right at the top, can't miss it. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Simple, true, eternal, like the North Star, holding steady beyond the reach of human corruption, lighting our way, helping us find north. It's a good thing, too, because the struggle continues. Sure, sometimes storm clouds keep the light from view, and it can be hard work. crazy hard. But like Grandma said, sometimes you got to be just a little crazy.